Hey, okay, so for anyone who doesn't know, Kat, this is Kat McLean. She, you know, is one of my friends and also works at Buddha Belly with us and is a yoga teacher, is a health coach, and just does so many amazing things. Kat, you're like, one of my best friends, and I honestly don't know what I'd do without you. So I'm glad you're in my life. And so, you and I have talked about so many times, like we just want to do a podcast. We just want to do YouTube videos. You and I are always having these conversations about, the things that we've been through in life and our experiences and how they've shaped us and molded us and how, even 10 years ago we're unrecognizable to that time now when we look at ourselves. And so it's been such a blessing for me, I think, to have you on my journey because it really allows me to connect with someone who's been through something similar. We've had very similar experiences, different, but very similar. And it's just been very valuable. So for us, we have that ability to connect with those people. There are people out there who don't have these people in their lives and don't have that ability yet, haven't found their tribe. Whereas, like, you and I are really lucky and blessed that we are able to be around people every day that are on that journey as well. And it's something that we didn't always have. And so we want to be able to share that with other people, from all across the world that may not otherwise have access to something like this. And so here we are. We are finally doing it. We kind of just tried so many times to do it, and it would always be like one of us was feeling off, mostly me. But I just feel like things really need to be in the moment for me. I don't like to force things. You don't like to force things either. And so we decided that in order to get these things done, we're just going to do them on the fly when we actually feel ready and well, not feel ready. You're never ready for anything in life, but just feel like excited and open and ready for it. Um, and so this week, I've really been thinking a lot about sobriety and how it led me to my spiritual awakening and how it led me to completely transform my life. And, the universe has been sending me all these signals about um, that subject itself because, I've been running into people from high school that, are just getting sober now. And I am running into people changing their lives by becoming sober. And I'm just like so inspired by it. And it's reminding me of this. And just movies I've been watching, well, not movies, I guess, series on Netflix. I've been watching Firefly Lane and it's just like triggering a lot of this stuff for me. And my high school teacher came over today and we sat outside on the deck and had a cup of tea. And, you know, I could really, he was like my dad in high school. He literally saved my life. He's a story for another day, but I would not be who I am today without him. Not even close to a chance. He really just cared about me and took me under his wing and truly saved my life. So I
Badass.
appreciate him so much, and so it was just so interesting we're talking today about, who I used to be and where I was and the type of people I was around and just the environment. And it really made me want to just start talking about this today because I know a lot of people are just starting this journey now of sobriety. And so if we can sit here and talk about what we went through and it helps someone else, good. So here we
Yeah.
are. So, Kat, I just want to hear about what age did you start drinking? Like, when did this, like, drinking drugs? When did this start for you?
Um, so first I just want to say, yay, excited to be here and that we're finally doing it because as you said, this is a long time coming. So
Go us.
I'm happy that we're I'm happy that we're getting it done. Yeah, so my I guess I started drinking in grade 9, so I would have been 13 or 14.
Yeah.
And alcohol was always prevalent in my home, and that was a common social activity. And then, we started having what then the parents would go away, started having little gatherings at 14, grade 9 sort of age. And then that's when that kind of started happening, which is really, really young now that I think about it. But that's sort of the first introduction to that I can remember sort of consciously drinking it, and that idea of, oh, this is something that can make everything go away. That sort
Yeah.
of numbing, the concept of numbing became very apparent at
Yeah,
those
you're
first few encounters. You could be somebody that you could be somebody else, and that was very appealing because
mm,
I was very uncomfortable with who I was.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And I think, like, you have such a good point about when you're young, you think, "Oh, I'm not that young," and, but then when you look back and we are still young, but it's just you look back and you're like, "I really shouldn't have been in those situations." My brain was very underdeveloped and not
Yeah.
ready to understand what the consequences of those actions were going to be. And I know
Hmm.
that's something I really struggled with, uh, becoming sober, was about facing the reality of everything that I had done or been through or encountered. And through, the trauma therapy that I did, she said, your brain was so underdeveloped, Melanie. And so when you're young at that age, you truly cannot anticipate what's going to happen next and what your consequences are going to be. So if there's anyone out there beating themselves up over this type of thing, like, please understand that about yourself. um you didn't really know a whole lot about life yet, and so now as an adult, you are able to make more conscious decisions about where you're going, and you can anticipate some of the consequences for the most
Yeah.
part.
And I think it was a massive part of it is that need to fit in. And that is really important to teenagers and was really important to me. I was always a super, super smart, textbook smart kid, but I didn't want to be that kid because I stood out. And I never wanted to stand out. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be the same as everybody else. And so everybody else was doing these things. And it gave me a sense of false confidence that allowed me to start speaking out and sort of sharing my voice. Like I felt like it wasn't okay for me to talk because everything I said sounded nerdy and people didn't want to be around a nerd. And I mean, at that time, there was no such thing as nerds being cool. Like they were legitimately picked on. And I think there probably is a little bit now, but it was just, yeah, like it was not the cool thing to be. So I thought, okay, I'm going to fit in. I'm going to do this. It did make me uncomfortable, but then once you get past that sort of tipping point, then everything goes out the window. And yeah, that, like I said, false sense of security. But it was definitely for me to fit in and be somebody other than I was, because I was so uncomfortable in my own skin and with my own feelings. And looking back now as an adult, I just want to hug that little girl, because I was so terrified and so um, like you said, unsure of what the future held. And that uncertainty really was painful. And I didn't know how to deal with it.
And so do you think, it was those experiences that were happening and your unsureness of the world and what was going on, and that you're growing and developing and you're trying to understand who you are and what life is about, and you're entering into these, like, new consciousness and these new, environments where now you're having to understand, like, oh, I have relationships with, like, other girls, and, uh, in my experience, girls were really mean. And, now I'm having this relationship to, like, school, and so achieving, and then I'm having a relationship with, like, I'm growing and my hormones are changing, and then I've got whatever going on at home. And so did you feel like in those instances that, oh, I just, like, don't have anyone to talk to, I'm so alone? Like, did you have anyone to talk to or talk to anyone? And do you think that that's maybe why you felt so alone, is that you didn't have anywhere to turn, really?
So the thing is that I've spent a lot of time, and you and I have talked about this, but which is why I'm glad we're doing it, is to get this information out, as you started off with. This is why we're sharing. I did have support, but I didn't feel like I had support. But
Yeah.
ultimately, if I had reached out, people would have listened. But I was so, so, so scared to share my voice and to speak my voice because I actually don't think that for whatever reason, and maybe it's a teenage thing. Like I did not think that there was anybody else going through what I was going through in my mind and the thoughts that I was having, and the just the low self-esteem. Like I had this blurred vision that everybody else was happy, and that if I behaved a certain way around girls, guys, whatever, um that would allow people to see me in a different way. I was so unconfident. I was
Mm.
so um I hated myself.
Yeah,
I hated
I
myself.
relate
I
to that.
hated everything about myself. I hated the way I looked. I hated the way that uh, why I was had all these brains. I didn't, and again, that's just what it was. That was my talent, was that I had the ability to regurgitate knowledge. But I was terrible at sports and I just wanted to
Oh,
be athletic. I was clumsy, but I was very musical and very, like I said, very studious. But
mm,
I didn't like that that's what I was given and that's what my skills were. And so I wanted to be with the cool kids. And yeah, it was just once I found this way to sort of numb or mask things, I didn't have to deal with it.
yeah.
So that became a pattern that kind of went on for the next 25 years. I just was like, it was just next thing after next thing after next thing. And it was like, oh, well, if I just like put the band-aid on and the numbing agent, I don't actually have to deal with my problems. So yeah, it was a year of years of layering. Just, and now we're slowly undoing that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, I had a similar experience to you. I was always like really
Yeah.
different and I knew it and I was never accepted. Like, I feel like my whole life growing up, it was always like, well, why are you this way? Why are you that way? Whatever. And I was actually like naturally a very loving person. And it was like
Mm.
people thought that there was like something wrong with me for being that way.
Did you think there was something wrong with you for being that way?
I didn't until it became like so prevalent that people were like, what, like people, it was like people assumed that I had like some type of agenda or something by being a loving person or being so open. And I think it triggered other people's shadows a lot. Because when you're really stuck in your own hurt and your trauma and your pain, when
Mhm.
someone embodies a lot of light and somebody embodies a lot of like pure love, unconditional love, it triggers your shadows so
Mm,
deeply, and the light almost becomes your enemy in a way. And so I began to be like, okay, I'm not like anyone else. And so what's around me, I guess, is how I have to conform. So I became a chameleon. I became
mm,
so good at adapting to every situation. I was friends with every friend group. Like I was friends with the jocks, I was friends with the nerds, I was friends with the mean girls, I was friends with everyone. I could fit into any group because I became so good at adapting to that group's consciousness and adapting to their behavior. And I think I was like at the time really trying to learn people. It was like part of my experience that my soul came here to understand was very different walks of life, very different ways of thinking, different ways of being. And it actually provided me with so much knowledge that helps me today with my clients and with my lifestyle and um, the things that I'm learning about. But at the time, it was very confusing. And yeah, I was the least sports driven or capable person, I think, in Canada, honestly. Like it's like a borderline painful because it was like gym class, I would be like, what kind of excuse can I make up to like get out of this or go home or like die? Like I just hated it so much. I dreaded gym. Um I always got picked last on the team. And it wasn't something like I was sitting there in the corner like crying about it, but and I was like, yeah, no, don't pick me. I wouldn't pick me either. Like I'm terrible at this. Like your team's gonna
just ignore
fail.
me.
Yeah, so I like, it wasn't I understood why and stuff, but it just I was always like, why do I live in this world where nothing makes sense? I just feel like I'm just such an outcast and an outsider. And that there's really no one like me. And so, that began my journey of like becoming like everyone else or becoming like everyone else wanted me to be, right?
And for you, was that where alcohol came in? Was that part of that journey to be like others? And what sort of, when did that start for you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I started drinking in junior high, and I think I was 14 the first time I got like drunk. When I was younger, like I grew up in a French culture, so it's normal to have like a little bit of beer or a little bit of wine, and I do think that actually kind of helped me in some ways because it never made me like want to drink. I was never like someone's like, oh, I really need to have that. Like I wasn't the
Mm,
kid that would like steal alcohol from their parents. Like I would never do something like that. Or just like need to have it. So I think because it was more like regulated, it made me not so much seek it out. And when I
Yeah.
started drinking, I never liked it. Like I've never liked to drink. It's something that I did because, my friends were doing it. And I started to notice that as I was drinking, I was able to connect with people. And now, I'm 31 and I can recognize that, but at the time I didn't. And so when I was drinking, I was able to get other people to open up. So this is like part of my life path and like what I'm really good at doing now, and it served
Mm,
me to this point. But I didn't realize that that was like shaping me and molding me into being like, "Hey, Melanie, when you're an adult, you have a life purpose, and this is going to be part of it. And you're learning this through this now in a very unhealthy way, first of all." But it allowed
yeah.
me those experiences so that when people come to me with this now, I'm able to comfortably guide them through it. But
Yeah.
anyway, the point of the story is that I thought it was so great that I would be drinking and people their throat chakra was sh their throat chakras would open wide up, right? So these people all of a sudden are being so honest and they're communicating about their feelings and I'm just like, "Oh my god, like I am just soaking this up. This is just like this is gold here." Like I would love when people would open up to me and when we would have these really deep conversations because I think like growing up, I was always just so strange in the way that I needed to ask these deep I can't freaking talk today. Existential
Ex-
questions, okay? And like
I knew what you were saying.
yeah, it was weird. I'd be like 6 years old and someone would be pregnant and I would be like, "So how are you feeling at like being pregnant? What are your fears around carrying a child or being a mother and things?" And people would be like, what? Like, who is this thing? And there were adults who like appreciated that so much about me and were like, wow, you're so interesting. And then like you're actually like giving me this really good wisdom and asking me these really good questions that are helping me. But then there was like other adults that were like, what is wrong with you? Why are you this way? Stop it. Don't be like this. And
Yeah.
eventually I just listened to them too much, unfortunately. But anyway, so the whole point of drinking was that I was opening up to people. I was getting them to open and it just like really filled me up with something. And then there was
Mm,
the other part of it, which was people are a lot more affectionate and a lot more loving when they're drinking. They say that when you drink, it highlights your shadows and it also highlights your light. Okay? So your shadows, for example, from my own, I can look back on it now and I can think about, okay, it was highlighting my shadows in the way that if I drank the wrong thing or was around the wrong people, like if I was around a bunch of angry people, or people who felt abandoned or lonely or unworthy or all these things, as an empath, I also was picking up on what they were feeling, but it was also triggering the stuff that I had deep inside of me that I was feeling the same way. So add the alcohol, add those other people that I'm around, and add myself, what I'm dealing with. Um, and it would bring out those shadows. And so as much as I was like a happy drunk person, there were times that I was like a really angry, aggressive drunk person. And to be honest, like anyone who knows me at the yoga studio or in my life now, would never expect me to be somebody who was like scrappy. Okay. But I was scrappy too. Like I was the person that like my friends would sick me on you because they'd be like, oh, Mel's like she's good at standing up for herself and standing up for us and protecting us. But I thought I was speaking my truth, but I wasn't. I was doing it in an unhealthy and toxic way.
yeah.
And it wasn't a loving experience at all. There was like much healthier ways to speak your truth, which is like something you and I are doing in this moment. Um,
Yeah.
and so that was different. So it really triggers
Yeah.
people's shadows. And then the light part is I was a very loving, generous, compassionate, empathetic, uh, very affectionate person. And so when I would drink, other people would reach this level. And so there'd be people that were like stone walls. And then all of a sudden they would drink and I would start to see their like light open up and they would start to talk and communicate and be themselves and be free and just have fun and experience all this joy. And I felt like drinking was fun. It brought me joy because people were open and we could just like, really just have fun. And what I didn't realize was like, Melanie, um, that's not joy and that's not healthy and it's toxic. And all you have to do is like just get to the core of what actually brings you joy. Who actually are you? And what kind of people do you actually want to be around? What kind of environment do you need? What kind of activities do you need that actually bring you joy? You know?
Yeah. Well, it's a it releases inhibitions, right? We call it liquid, we used to joke about it, liquid courage. And it's like, oh yeah, just have a couple drinks and then you can talk to anybody. And I was the same. People said I don't talk to people, I talk at them. And usually that was when I was drinking. And I do like to talk anyways, but it was a very sort of aggressive thing as well. And yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of people who I start to talk about, I feel like I've lived several lives in this body, but I talk to people who don't know me sort of pre-yoga, or who know me pre-yoga and know me now, and they're still just like, I can't believe
What?
you're the same person. And also people who know me from now that, get snippets about before, and they're like, no way.
Yep.
And sometimes I sort of go, oh yeah, that was me. But again, drawing into one of the things you said, there was a reason. There's a reason for everything. I had to follow that path and make those choices, and be in the situations that I was in order to be at this point now where I can offer services to other people, because I've
Okay.
done the journey. I mean, it's not over by any means,
Never
but
over. Yeah.
having that experience, yeah, allows me to sort of identify with people and all that. So yeah, I remember the same thing. I loved that sort of thrill of being able to say what was ever on my mind, or without worrying about the backlash, or having people, same thing, open up and share their feelings. And I was like, oh yeah, this is great. But then there's always the after effect. And so it's
Oh,
like, there's the two sides to it. And then the fact that it is actually so detrimental to the physical body. But this all takes time, and it's not, everybody has to find their path and find their truth and find their sort of balance. And I'll always say to people, like, I'm not going to tell you to quit drinking, or I'm not
nope.
going to tell you to, I'm not going to tell you to do anything. I'm just going to share my experience of both. And I'm so happy. I'm happier than I've ever been. Is it hard work to
Hell
speak your
yeah.
truth without numbing? Heck yes. Like, there is no, I'm not going to lie, but it's like anything else. It gets easier, and it's way more satisfying and way more freeing. Like, there's that, like, when we numb the feelings, we miss out on so much. And so there's a beautiful book called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. And I've just gone through this 10-week course, and taken a break, and actually starting another 10-week course with them. But one of the things that he talks about is, as humans, and I try to impart this to my clients and friends, is as humans, we try to feel better. We always say, I want to feel better. I want to feel better, especially when we're feeling not good. But what we need to do is get better at feeling.
Yes. Yes. And
As
not
human
numb it out.
beings, yeah, as human beings, we are going to have feelings. That's part of the human experience. And if we didn't feel the bad feelings, how would we know what the good feelings are? And so it's like feeling what you feel and just sitting with it and being like, oh, okay, this is how I feel. And I draw a lot of that in my yoga classes too. I'm like, okay, what do you actually physically feel? Like, what is it? Just identify it. It's okay. There's no right or no wrong. And then
Just the awareness around it.
exactly. And then how do we take that off the mat and be in the situation? Because we're told in our society that feeling a certain way is wrong, that we should be happy all the time, that we should be pain free all the time. And so it's like, oh, pop a pill, it's accepted. And yes, legitimately, there are situations where we need to take medication, where we need that allopathic medicine for certain diseases and whatnot. I agree with that. But
Yeah.
when it's a regular part of our life, it's like, oh, I have a headache, cook. Or, oh, my leg hurts, cook.
Without even a
Oh, I've
thought.
got this, cook. Not exactly a thought of like, what's going on, and what could I do to try and alleviate this with food or water or movement or whatever, or
Yeah.
what is the cause? It's just a band-aid instead of like finding out the root cause. So yeah, I
Well,
think we've kind of gone off, but
that's okay.
but
But
we're still in the same realm.
it's all gold, right? So I think it's interesting, you say that, like, okay, yeah, these physical things are going on, and I'm popping a pill of like Tylenol or whatever. And like, I have friends in junior high. I remember I had this one friend, and she was like addicted to Tylenol, and I didn't know. And I always was like, huh, that's really interesting. Like,
I think I took a lot
huh,
of Tylenol, yeah,
yeah.
like at a young age.
And there's this huge disconnect. And on my own healing journey, I've had to come to realize that for every physical ailment, there's an emotional manifestation that's happened. So there's some type of blockage or trauma or something that's blocked, and your body is trying to get your attention. So I very rarely have success with medical doctors. I've had to go to all different types of healers and all types of like naturopaths, and honestly, it's been the inner child trauma therapy and stuff that helped me the most. But when you're having these physical problems, your body's trying to get your attention. So like Louise Hay has all these books if this is something that you're interested in, and she really goes into depth about this on how like any kind of physical symptom is the result of something else. So like something like eczema, right? Oh, you're going to the doctor, it's not getting any better, they're giving you all these treatments, it's been like 5 years and you're still suffering with eczema. It's like, well, have you tried the emotional route of that? You know what I mean? Like, why aren't we doing that? And so my whole life in the last 12 years has been about figuring out, how do I bridge mind, body, spirituality, and my emotion, and take those things and put them together. And that's what's allowed me this like profound healing on every single level. Like I've been able to eliminate all of these problems almost because of that. So if I wake up in the morning, for example, and I'm like, oh, my knees hurt, like that's really weird, I don't have knee pain, I don't have any injury, like what's going on? Well, your knees are
Mm,
connected to your root chakra, right? So that might be telling me then that I'm really stuck in survival mode, I'm working too much, I'm trying too hard to belong somewhere, I'm not feeling secure, I'm not feeling grounded, I've been here, there, everywhere, whatever, I haven't taken time to sit down and meditate, I'm worrying too much about money, I'm worrying too much about foundation, I don't feel safe, I don't really have a place in the world, something like that. So that's kind of the route my brain would take. And if when clients come to me, that's also the route that, we start exploring. And
yeah.
it's truly life changing. And another thing that you said, Kat, that I really kind of wanted to retouch on was you talked about like how you really found the contrast really helpful. So the polarity of good and bad emotions integrate you as a whole person. And so without being aware of the good and the bad, and truly being fully there for the experience of both, you're never going to be a balanced person, right? So that's the yin and the yang. Life is about all of that, right? So we think about our seasons and we think about how, after winter, the darkness and the cold of winter, spring starts to come up. There's new growth, there's light. Then summer comes. It's even more light. People feel expanded. People want to socialize. Like people feel so much more joy in those times. But the winter provides us with this inner reflection, this space away from everyone else, this darkness that we have to face. And so
Yeah.
the winter becomes very difficult for people, especially in a cold place like where we live, because it forces you to slow down, and it forces you to feel your emotions, and it forces you to become aware of the darkness. And,
Mhm.
there's not much light in a day in the winter. Like you go home at 4 o'clock and it's dark outside, and you didn't even see the light because you were at work all day. And so you get kind of thrown into this dark period. And so when spring starts to come around, you start to feel like, oh my God, oh, okay, I didn't realize how dead I was inside and how bad I felt and how hard it was. And it's like you go outside and when things first start growing and the sun starts coming out and you're like, I feel like I can breathe again and I feel alive again and I feel like motivated all of a sudden. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the joyride of life. And so when you're not willing to be there for your emotions when things are bad, you're not going to really understand when things are good. If somebody has a straight line in their life and it's just like meh, that's all you're going to experience is meh, right? You're going to experience that. But if you've experienced the lowest
There are no
lows,
straight lines.
yeah, you can also experience the highest highs. So like
Yeah.
when you're talking about like on the vibrational scale, which I'm going to
Mm.
do a nice little picture of for a second, and whoever's listening to this on the podcast isn't going to see it, but anyway. So um is that too bright?
No,
No, okay. Well,
I've
anyway.
got it. So
So
describe your picture in case they're listening.
yeah, so it's just like it's like a scale, right? So all the way at the top is high and all the way at the bottom is low. And so if you, and this is the center, right? Like this is the middle balanced part. If you don't experience any lows in your life, you're never going to go all the way to slingshot to the very opposite spectrum, which is the highest that you can go, right?
Mm.
And so you have to think of your lowest moments as slingshots for yourself. So, you know what? When I'm in a low moment, I feel sad, I feel grief, I feel whatever. I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to identify it. Well, try to. You don't even have to. You just have to be like, okay, I feel sad. And I'm not going to just suck it in and just distract myself with work or something else or change the subject. I'm truly going to say, okay, you know what? I feel really sad. Why? Hmm. I don't really know, or maybe I do know. And then, okay, like sadness, I acknowledge you, you're there. And then your sadness and whatever emotion you're feeling is now able to leave your body. You don't trap it anymore. It doesn't become this thing trapped inside of you that's going to manifest later in your life, especially when you built up all of that. So it's like every day you should be allowing the good and the bad feelings to come in and really become present and aware with them and just say, okay, yeah, okay, now I don't feel sad anymore. Now I can move on to something instead of trying to escape from it.
Yeah.
And then you become friends with yourself and your life becomes so much more of a journey and you start to understand that there's always going to be this ebb and flow in life. And when you try to fight against that and resist it, you're going to suffer.
Yeah, suffering is a choice.
Hmm. And if
Suffering is a choice.
Yeah, and it's those low moments and those hard moments in your life that you experience. If you're just willing to be there and be present for them, you're going to enjoy the moments that are good and happy and peaceful so, so much when they arrive. And if you can be in those hard moments and know that, you know what, in this hard moment, I'm growing, I'm learning more about myself, I'm learning more about what I don't want so that I can create more of what I do want.
Mm.
And these are, these hard moments are teaching me about myself and they're teaching me about life. And it's just about an experience. We're here to experience and learn and develop this knowledge and experience. So don't fight against it.
Yeah, and I think all experiences are valid. And so, sort of circling back to what we were talking about, the decisions and choices we made as
Yeah.
youngsters, that experience has built part of our built part of who we are, that was necessary to for the next thing to happen. Like, it's all, I don't know that I would say it's predestined, but that was required for us to be able to talk about it now and to be able to share about it now. um, it's all sort of these layers or building blocks, if you like, and it makes it so that I'm not just reading about these childhood experiences and saying, oh, well, I read that, kids who experience this and do this feel this way. Well, no, I lived it, so let me tell you about my experience.
Yeah.
But again, that's just my experience. um, yeah, I love the talking about like the light and darkness. And but a thing that I to sort of add to that and shift it a little bit is thing that I noticed this year. I wasn't planning on being back the whole winter. I
Yeah,
came
you're
back
supposed to be
a
in
year
India.
ago. I came back a year ago, and a year more than a year ago, and thought I would just be here for a short time. And so going into, winter 2020, knowing that I was probably going to be here for most of it, I decided to sort of do a little mindset shift. I do a lot of mindset work for myself and with clients, and I know that there's always a choice. And so I said, okay, well, what are my choices? What are the facts? A, I'm here, not going anywhere.
Yep.
B, I am not Mother Nature, so I cannot control the weather. Uh, C, I can choose how I think about it and how I sort of approach it. So, um, yeah, and you've probably seen on my social, I bought myself some snow pants and just decided to get out there and embrace it. And so, yeah, I mean, the actual physical darkness is around, but I think that can be, and you touched on it, there's so much positive in that. It's sort of that inner journey and that time to be quiet and to go within and to slow down a little bit. And I accepted that, but I also tried to find the balance of embracing and being outside and being like, what can I do? Oh, today I can only do 10 minutes. Great. But that hit of fresh air, or that hit of like, connection with nature. And I know you've found the same thing with being out with your dogs. It's such a reminder that, what, maybe we're down, but we can always bring it up a little bit. So there can be the super highs and the super lows, but there can also be these sort of little ripples so that it's not so aggressive. Like, the more we meditate and the more sort of internal work we do, we still feel, but
Yes.
because we know that there is going to be this and there is going to be
Yes.
this, we're not so quick to react. We're not so like shocked when it comes, like, why is this happening? It's like, oh, this is happening. Okay. And so then to add to like what you said, that acceptance, I have a little acronym that I borrowed from one of my teachers, Bernie Clark. He's a
Mm,
yin teacher out of Vancouver. And he says RNAI, and I talk about this in my yin classes sometimes. So the way we remember RNA is it's that RNA is the precursor for DNA. So if you can remember that, those are the first three letters of the acronym, and then I is the last one. So R is recognize. It's like I recognize that I'm feeling something. And
yes.
then N is name it. What am I feeling? Sadness, pain, joy, elation, love, lust, whatever. And then it's A is accept. Okay, this is what it is right now.
Wow.
It's gonna
Yeah.
could change. And then the I is I'm gonna investigate it because I know it's gonna change. So we can do that in a physical sense, and I'll do that in the physical sense in a yoga class of like, okay, we're gonna be here for 5 minutes in this yin posture. Let's kind of go through where are you feeling things, but we can then take it off the mat into our lives. And you wake up and you feel a certain way, and it's like, well, what am I actually feeling? Like, am I before we snap, and say something or do something that it's like, well, what am I actually feeling? And to again to come full circle back, I think as a teenager at that time I was in so much pain,
Yeah.
but I wasn't able to sit with it. And not even just teenager, it went through my 20s and early 30s. I wasn't able to sort of sit with it and say, what am I feeling? What do I need? Like, what is this? And just be okay with what was. And
Yeah.
that being okay with what uh, is challenging, but it is the best gift that you can give yourself.
I agree.
That acceptance and that contentment, whether it's a positive feeling or a negative feeling. You
Yeah,
know.
because I think for so long I thought that if I went into the bad feelings that I would stay there forever, and I didn't realize that like my willingness to go into the bad feelings while they're arising is the extent at which I'm going to feel peace and happiness on the other side. So once I started to recognize that I really had to be with those feelings and acknowledge them as they were coming up, that they were coming up in perfect timing and that there's not a later date to shelf it for. That's not going to happen. Because what's going to happen when you shelf it is something else is going to trigger you later and then later and later and later. And it's going to build up so much. You become a volcano and it's going to explode. And it's going to explode in some type of life crisis I found for myself. It was like I was so unwilling to deal with what was inside that my external circumstances were reflecting everything inside of me. So as within, so without. So whatever your internal reality is always going to be reflected in your external reality. And I used to feel like such a victim and blame so much because I kept having these things popping up within people, situations, environments, experiences. And it was literally just my own inner like trauma and my own misery inside and my own feelings that were trying to make me aware of them. And so I was attracting all these circumstances to myself through outer experiences to get my attention. And so
Mm,
once I started to become aware of, okay, actually, no, we need to acknowledge these feelings. We need to be their friend. We need to, I need to parent myself every time these things come up. Then I'm going to stop attracting those experiences. So instead of building my life from the outside in, I started building it from the inside out. So it was like,
yeah.
oh, once I allowed myself and took the time and dedicated myself to having that relationship with feeling all the time and not numbing myself out, then I didn't have to experience things externally anymore, and my entire life started to shift.
Yeah.
I started having positive experiences. I started having loving experiences in situations and with other people. I started finding people who were kind, loving, safe, and people who were understanding and compassionate, and people who were gentle, and
Mm,
situations that I felt good in, and that I felt that I belonged in, and that I felt safe in, and that I felt joy and peace and happiness. And I was like, huh, and then my life stayed that way. And I mean, I'm a human, so I still have triggers that come up all the time. I am forever a
of course.
student learning on this journey and forever trying to become the best version of myself. But I truly changed my life by being willing to feel. and
Yeah.
not numbing it out anymore. And so, that brings us back to like our whole topic is like, um, why did we start drinking? Well, that's why. I started drinking because everyone else was doing it, but then as I started drinking, okay, but let's back up the train for a second because I've never been the kind of person that's going to do something because other people are going to do it. Like never. I never got into hard drugs, and my friends knew. Like, don't even ask her because she'll beat you up if you even ask her. Like, I was the kind of person that was just like, I don't care if you do it, just don't do it beside me, and don't peer pressure me to do it because I'm gonna punch you. Like, I was just so
Mhm.
feisty about it. But I was drinking because everyone was having so much fun, and I was like, "Ooh, I wanna have fun." And, as I drank some more, I started to be like, "Oh, I don't feel these bad feelings anymore. I feel more open. I feel like I belong more. I feel more accepted. I feel more, so much like joy and freedom. I felt free to like be myself."
Yeah.
And the problem is like I somehow got acceptance through this. I became more accepted to other people. And I was the person that like I was friends with every friend group. So I was invited to every party, and people would call me like at a party if I was working, waitressing or whatever. So I'd be there late at night and they'd be like, "Oh my God, like where's Mel?" There's like 13 people on the phone yelling at me, like, "Why isn't Mel at this party?" And I like really thrived off of that. I was like, "Oh yeah, like, like I love being that person for other people." And like it's actually like kind of sad now looking at it. I wish I wasn't that person because I'd probably be in a lot different place in my life, but I don't wish anything different. I just mean
Mm.
I wish I had different awareness at the time that I could have done that in a healthier way,
Yeah.
um, instead of like wishing that away because that experience was very valuable. But um, yeah, I became the life of the party, and that became my identity. And I
Yeah.
unfortunately didn't really know how to be myself truly. And so that was like the next best thing for me. But I wasn't myself because there was a lot of things I did or said, or a lot of things I behaved, in ways I behaved that just weren't true to me. It was so far from the truth of who I was, it wasn't even funny. And so um yeah, and then the other thing was like I was just looking for connection. I connected with people so deeply when they were drinking, you know? So I know I asked you this question already, but is there anything else that you want to add of like why do you think you were drinking?
Yeah. I mean, it was and I resonate with a lot of stuff that you've said, right? It's like the idea that I was also very stubborn, and I was like, I wasn't going to do anything that I didn't want to do. And so I told myself that I was doing it because I wanted to.
Mm,
But in my wisdom of years of and age or whatever, of looking at it and going back and sort of picking it apart, it's ultimately because I wasn't confident in who I was. I didn't think that my voice mattered. I didn't think that what I had to say mattered. I didn't like who I was. I
yeah.
was unhappy, and I just thought it made me a shinier, brighter, more fun. It was the same. I was the party girl, and there were periods through my adult life then that I was starting to be identified with that. At times, I was like, "Yeah, sweet, that's my identity." But then I was like, "Oh, that's my identity, and that's what I'm known for, nothing else." And that started to hit home that I was like, "Oh, so I'm not known as being like a loyal friend or, someone which was ultimately who I wanted to be and who I feel like I am at nature. But that wasn't what was coming through. And so that's when it started to like sort of shift for me. But yeah, the reasoning behind it, just I think just sadness and lack of self-confidence, lack of self-worth. I had told myself all these stories about um, why I wasn't enough,
Yeah.
basically.
So you're like,
Yeah.
you're trying to run from your own unworthiness and trying to numb out how horrible it feels to be you because when you're a kid you just don't know any different. And like you said, like
Yeah.
there was avenues where you could talk to people. Like I know I could have always gone to my mom, but I felt so trapped in my own reality and in my own mind, and I was so confused, I think, that I didn't even know what to do. And I was trapped in the experience itself. And yeah, like you're just we both relate to like just feeling so something's not right. I'm different than everyone else. I feel unworthy. I feel unwanted. I had no self-esteem. I don't, and I know you've talked about that too. Like I didn't like anything about myself. I was like very overdeveloped very early at like 10. It was ridiculous. So I just felt like so much shame about that and all these other things. And so
Isn't that funny? I felt the opposite because I was like always no, I didn't feel like a girl, and all the
yeah,
rest of my all the rest of my friends looked
yeah,
great and curvaceous, and I was like, wah, wah. Like we always, again, that's why I just want to hug that kid and be like, you are who you are, and that's like a beautiful creation, and your gifts are your gifts. But I just everything about me was not good enough, and I was not satisfied, and so I built this really twisted uh, image, mental image, body image, and that just sort of fed that, and everything else just started to feed this story, and then it,
yep,
it just grew into addictions and eating disorders and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, I just wish that I could, you know, help that young person and say like, you are who you are for a reason, and you have a purpose being here. Um, and just find that self-love a lot earlier, because it took a long time to
yeah,
to discover.
yeah. And I like what you say about you want to go back to that young girl and you want to say all these things to her because like um for me, part of my healing work has been about inner child work and reparenting. And so,
Yeah.
for example, like I'll be really triggered about something in a week because the universe is trying to present to me like, "Hey Mel, like it's time for you to like bring this to your attention and try it's time to like solve it and heal it. Resolve it within yourself so you can integrate more of your light and more of who you truly are." So, for example, how this would come up for me was like I said, in a week, I will encounter someone from 12 years ago. So then I'm like, oh, interesting. Okay, who was I 12 years ago? And what was I doing? Where was I? Who was I friends with? What was my thought process, my inner dialogue? How did I feel? And then I might just like put it off and be like, okay, whatever. But then the next day I'll encounter another person from that time period, or I'll watch a movie that like literally takes me back to that place, or I'll overhear a conversation or just have a conversation with someone, or I'll encounter someone who is where I was at that point. And then I'm like, okay, this is a really big cycle that's coming up for me that wants me to close it so that I can find this inner peace with myself. And so what I do is then I do this journaling around it and I meditate with it. And then I find that fragment of myself. So like wherever my soul split off was at that point where um I neglected that part of me. I pushed it away. I didn't want to know that part of me. It's in the past. It's gone and I'm not even identifying with it. But you know what happens is like now you're fragmented and you're not integrated with who you are. You need to be integrated with your shadows and your light, the good and the bad, in order to fully love and accept yourself and find that balance. And it's the only way you're going to feel true peace and happiness. And so I've dedicated myself to doing this as painful as it is. It gets easier every time. But, I have to go back and be like, okay, you know what? You didn't know any better. And I'm so sorry that you went through that experience. Because all I really needed at the time was a compassionate, empathetic witness that could say to me, you know, it, Melanie, like, you're really young. Like, these are things that happen. Or, those people, didn't know any better. Or you didn't know any better. Or I'm sorry that that happened to you. I'm sorry you felt that way. That's all I needed. And then I could have kept that part of myself intact, right? But instead, I disassociated myself with that part of myself. I pushed it away. So now I've become like half of myself because I'm not accepting who I am fully. So part of the journey is to like know that you have all these fragments of yourself that you've split off from yourself from these traumatic experiences. And it's up to you now to go back and find every single one of them. Take it, reintegrate it with yourself. Find it, deal with it, reintegrate it with yourself. And then there's that inner parenting that needs to happen as well. So, like you said, what do you want to say to that little girl? What would you want someone to do for you in that situation? So, what did you really need? So that might be, well, I really needed an adult to come at that time and really see that I was struggling and that I was doing something, be really loving and kind to me and just pick me up and hold me and
Yeah.
just like rub my back or, you know, whatever, and let me cry and tell me it's gonna be okay and that they're gonna protect me and that I don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And that those types of things are what really can change your life, is that inner child healing and that reparenting of yourself. You have to become your own mother and father
Yeah.
inside of yourself, right? And your own protector, your own rescuer. And so, um,
It's interesting that talk about inner child work, because this presence process that I was talking about deals with that. And it talks about, there's 10 weeks and you're doing breath work twice a day. And this is the conscious connected breath work that I'm learning to facilitate now. And so but this presence process is an individual journey that you do over 10 weeks. And part of it is just exactly what you said, integration of past childhood trauma that hasn't had a chance to be absorbed, because at the time we didn't have the capacity, for whatever reason, to accept what was happening to us, to deal with it, and to process it. And so it looks at projections and reflections. That was just sort of coming up to me right now. And it's like all these people are brought into our lives, similar to what you were saying, like people or events are brought into our lives that might trigger us, but actually give us this opportunity. It's the universe's sort of
yes,
big joke to give us an opportunity to be like, you know what? Here we go. I'm going to give you this chance to be triggered so that you can now integrate what was unprocessed at that time. But it feels to us like it is the other person doing something to us. And in
mhm,
actual fact, it has nothing to do with that person. We need to learn how to be in that moment. And that's why it's so beautiful. Everything works together. This has just been like the next layer for me of using meditation and pause and all of this. But it's like, oh, in that moment, what is this triggering in me? And then you learn these skills to sort of go, oh, this is not actually something I need to react to, because this is a projection. This is a projection from years ago. And then you just sort of sit with it, and you go back and you go back and you go back and you go back. The one that I'm working with, there's 7-year cycles, and it's like, okay, well, what happened 7 years ago? Okay, well, what happened 7 years before that? What happened and you try, and it's not just as easy as, like this is in-depth stuff that you and I are both sort of working through, but
it's been 12 years in the making. Yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And it's something that I'm working towards, working on myself right now, because like you said, it's a continual journey. There's never any sort of and we're never like done the work completely, but it's something that I am starting to disseminate as well to people now. And it's really exciting, because this is one of the most recent things that's given me this like massive progress and sort of unleashing and reconnection to uh, emotion.
Yeah.
For me, I tend to be quite, like I can be super animated,
Yeah.
but I joke that I'm a robot and I don't cry. So
I've
this is
tried,
helping.
believe me. Yeah.
I know you've got me a couple times. You've had a couple tears rolling down, but
Good.
yeah, like it's not that that's a good thing. It's not that it's something that I say it just in jest, but it's a thing that I need to work on, because all emotions are good, and I realize
Yes.
this, but sometimes we have that protection from childhood that is just so built up, because we had to suppress these traumas.
Survive.
It's a survival mechanism from the mind, basically. And it's like um, it takes a long time to sort of pull back from that and to sort of unleash that. And first of all, figure out, sometimes we figure out what it is, sometimes we don't, but layers on layers,
Like an
layers.
onion.
We're like a big onion.
Yeah, that onion never ends. Just when you think you've healed something, it comes back in another layer. But it becomes like a game, and it becomes like fun, and it becomes like a cool journey,
Yeah.
a puzzle, not a game, a puzzle.
Yeah.
And you know that by each time that you put more pieces back to that puzzle, that you become truly more who you are. You start to embody
Yeah.
more light. You start to embody more love and more peace and more
Yeah.
understanding. And you develop a different relationship with life and with other people that just feels so good. And I really like what you were talking about. It's like, when these outer experiences show up, where I've managed to find peace after being through like train wreck after train wreck after trauma after like horrible, 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 horrible experiences. I finally got to this place in my life in the last, 2 to 3 years, where when something outside of me shows up, I don't react anymore. I respond.
Yeah.
And the way that I always respond is, okay, what is this teaching me? What is this trying to tell me? So what is within me that is either within this person and how they're behaving or showing up, or what is it triggering inside of me? So if someone's doing something, it might not be a quality that I have that I need to look at, but it might be a quality from a long time ago that someone did to me that I've now suppressed and didn't deal with, that I need to revisit. So then at that point I would go, okay, what is this reminding me of? And
Mm.
why the heck does this keep showing up in my life over and over again? Like things that are patterns and that
The
continue.
universe.
Yeah, it keeps on knocking until you are ready and you're open to receiving it and looking at it. And eventually, like if you're not willing to look at those patterns and deal with it, something always explosive happens. That, like in my experience anyway, it's like, Melanie, you didn't really have to get to that point, and that wouldn't have happened if you focused on like shutting your eyes and getting really internal and having that inner dialogue and that inner work. You could have cleaned that up before it got bad. It's like, you know, drain the dirty bath water and then you can have a clean bath after. Like it's that simple. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's a big thing, but it's that simple to think about.
Yeah.
And so now when these things show up outside of me and my experiences, instead of responding, or instead of reacting, I respond. And you know what else I do? I say, thank you.
Yeah. It's a
So
gift.
instead of making that person or that experience my enemy, bless it. I send it love and I
Yeah.
say thank you. And I know that it has nothing to do with that person, and that person just showed up as my teacher, and that
They're the
person
messenger.
showed up as the messenger, yes,
Yeah.
and so that person truly, in effect, has done me a favor and a service. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess the other just to kinda touch on a couple of things before we get off here, um, at what point did you decide, like, yeah, no, I gotta stop with these addictions. This isn't helping me. Like when did you truly decide to make a change for yourself?
Yeah. And it wasn't an overnight thing.
No,
Uh
I hear you.
I didn't, yeah. And I've been talking a lot about this with people, and I'm constantly looking back as well. There was never, so specifically with drinking, there was never any day that I just woke up and I was like, today's the day. That's it. I had to, somebody asked me the other day, how many years has it been? And I said, I don't even know, because I didn't consciously say like today's the day.
Same.
I believe it's been more than 5 years. If I had to sit down and think about it, then I could. I remember the last. I think I remember the last drink I had, but it wasn't at that time. I wasn't going, this is the last drink. I'd known for a long time, with all the with all the things that I wanted to change. I knew about all of them for a long time. I knew for many, many years that I was just in this like sort of cycle of uh,
Destruction?
yeah, it was kind of a self-destruct thing. But I had to hit a couple rock bottoms before I
Yes.
before I came out. And I think that's the same with a lot of people. So I mean, there's one real bad rock bottom, but that stands out. But it's also like that wasn't the time that everything. I wish I could say that was the day, and then the next day I woke up and I was like, hey, I'm going to change everything, and I changed everything, and it was
Yeah.
magical. No, it doesn't work that way. And this is why I love coaching and working with people, because it's like, no, you have to do one thing at a time, and you have to give yourself the opportunity to succeed at that thing, so then you feel confident and then you can do the next thing.
Yes.
And so I did attack one thing at a time. In some instances I was doing more than one thing, but I felt, and I do feel, that it's easier to sort of focus on one thing. So yeah, I mean, as they unfolded, it was when I was ready, and when I'd
Like,
had enough. Like I was just like, I'm tired of living this lie and pretending that I am the same as all these other people. Uh, you've said that a couple times. You knew that you were different, and I did too. And it doesn't mean better, it just means different. And I always, thought that fitting in was what I wanted, and I actually fit out better. And I
hell
think
yeah.
I think everybody fits out better. We all walk. I think we should all walk to the beat of our own drum, or whatever that is, whatever combination that is. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a thing to embrace. And so I just kind of got tired of, yeah, like pretending that I was happy because I would be happy in this sort of fleeting moment. And then I would feel so disgusted about myself and about what I said and about what I did, or the money I spent, or how physically ill I felt, or whatever, that I was like, why am I doing this? For one night of fun, I'm destroyed for an entire week.
Yep.
And then at that point, I was starting to tune into a lot of like physical nutrition, like whatever, because I was having some serious body pains, issues, gut, whatever, mind. And I was like, I'm too young for this to be happening. Like, I am supposed to be physically fit. I'm supposed, like at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And it wasn't making sense. And I just started going, I'm way smarter than this. And I'm not, no, this is not how it's going to go. And so I started to look more at that. And then yoga took a bigger part of my life. I always say yoga saved my life, because it taught me that sort of connection with the messages inside, and that wisdom is the most important wisdom that we have. Like, this machine is the most important piece of machinery we'll ever come into contact with. And if we just listen to what it's saying, it won't guide us wrong. And so I started paying attention more to how stuff made me feel. And I was like, my body's actually telling me, no, like, this is poison for you.
Yeah.
But I had this battle because I'd be like, well, how come that person can do it? And da, da, da. And I was like, yeah, but you're not that person.
Yeah.
And I still had this. And that was with everything, like with food, with exercise, with this, with that. I still keep saying to myself, but you're not that person. And that's where this whole individual idea and concept to me, like, that's why it's so important to me. And when I work with people, it's like, I'm not going to give you the 21-day thing and say, this is the same for everybody, because we're not all the same.
No.
And so it's, and I know that from my own journey and comparing myself with other people and saying, well, why can't I do it like so-and-so? Because you're not so-and-so. So I really had to take ownership of what worked for me.
Yeah.
And that was hard and it was uncomfortable. But ultimately, it was like, what do I want more? Do I want to be living this lie where I am not happy with who I am, but I'm doing behavior that pleases other people, or that's seen as okay or acceptable, even though I feel like such a phony? Or do I want to follow this path that is like so foreign to me, but so comfortable at the same time?
Wow.
Like, I didn't know why I was so attracted to yoga and to Sanskrit and to chanting and to this whole world of like nothing I'd ever been exposed to. But I was just like, this is the most comfortable I've ever felt in my life.
Wow.
And it's the one thing that just, it's like, when I'm in that space, when I'm teaching or practicing any of the practices, nothing else matters. I'm completely at peace. So it wasn't to answer your question in a very long way.
Okay,
It was never,
that's how we do it on here.
it was never like, today's the day.
Yeah.
Because it was the same with, with any of the things that I shifted. I tried doing it that way and it didn't work. So it was like it was a consciousness and awareness, but it was not always. And for each sort of vice or thing that I was changing, it was slightly different. So, with smoking, I gave up smoking a couple of times. And finally I was just like, how about I just quit?
Mm-hmm.
How about I just stop lighting it and putting it to my face? How about that? Instead of a plan or this or that, how about I just make the decision not to buy a pack of cigarettes, because it's just me making the decision. So how about I just try that? And then it worked.
You want to know what's really funny? This jogs my memory about something hilarious. Again, like, people who know me from back then, yeah, you'll know that I smoked and whatever. People who know me now would be like, excuse me, pardon me, like, no, like, I can't even see this. Well, I did smoke. I started smoking when I was like 14, 15 or whatever. And I didn't actually start smoking with people. I had this one friend, and I was like, okay, like, I've been smoking like Captain Blacks, like, I didn't even smoke cigarettes yet. And I was like, I would like go sneak off and be like, hey mom, I'm going to my friend's house. Uh I'll see you later. And like, I'd meet her in the path because she lived close to me, and then we'd like smoke these Captain Blacks. I'd get so dizzy and I would like have the worst taste in my mouth, and I'd have to like sit down because I was so like, whew, I had this like big rush. And so I actually hid it for the longest time, and then somehow it developed itself into, like, cigarettes and whatever, but, um, I never actually really liked smoking, so I'm not really sure why I did it. I think I was just, like, harming myself in ways and just not caring about myself. Like, might as well not care about myself, whatever. And, so one thing I'll give my mom though is, my mom was like the type of mom that would be like, "Oh, you're going to your friend's house like for a sleepover or something or for the night?" She'd be like, "What are their parents' names? What's their phone numbers? I want to talk to them first." And she would like make sure that she would go to the door or talk to the parents on the phone and like
Yeah.
get to understand like who are the adults that are going to be there? What are they like? What are you guys going to be doing? Like, what other kind of people are going to be there? And so like, as much as my mom like really she was so strict and she truly tried to protect me from bad situations. Man, I found ways into them. Like just,
We always do. Yeah.
don't, like it's just what it was. It was like my soul on a level just really wanted to experience everything about life. It really did.
Mhm.
And as harmful as it was, it truly has, like I said, helped me become um in my soul's purpose now to be able to help other people, so I needed to experience that on some level. But anyway, so the reason that I quit smoking okay, so I never was super addicted to smoking. I still smoked a lot and obviously was like an actual smoker, but I wasn't the kind of person that like first thing in the morning I smoke when I wake up, and I wasn't the kind of person that like right after I eat I have to smoke. So I wasn't like, my mom would always be like, "You're not a true smoker, you could quit." And, like, when I was older, she didn't let me smoke when I was young, let's just clarify that for a second, okay? It wasn't until I was, like, 19 or whatever that, she was aware of it, and, I started smoking menthol cigarettes, and those were like stranger danger for me because I liked them so much that then I started to get like really deep into smoking. And I was like, I actually have an actual problem now. And then I'm drinking at the same time and I'm smoking like a whole pack of cigarettes and I wake up and I want to puke, not because I was drinking, but because I smoked so much.
Yeah.
And I would like not smoke for days after that. I'd be so hungover that I would just like not I couldn't smoke, it was disgusting to me, and my friends would wake up and, ugh, I'd be like, "You guys, how you doing this? I need to go outside away from you so I don't throw up on you." Now, one day I went to go, I went partying or whatever, smoked a bunch of cigarettes, drank way too much, and I was driving the next morning, and I was trying to light a cigarette, and I wasn't paying attention, and I was crossing the highway, and I almost died because a semi truck almost killed me because I was just, like, too hungover to know what
Lighting
I
a
was
cigarette.
doing. My cigarette was too important, like, oh my god, and in that moment, I was like, "Melanie, what the F are you doing? Like, who
Yeah.
who is this person that you've become? Why are you this person? Why are you so hungover and, like, feel like you're dying right now? Like, how are you even gonna get to where you're going? It's gonna take you 2 hours." Like, I was out of town. I'm like, "How am I gonna even get home? And then I have to go to work when I get there." I was like, this is not okay." So it was like right after I moved to Red Deer with Tammy, my best friend, and I went home that day and I was so hungover. I didn't smoke for 3 days. And I was really traumatized by almost dying that day.
I'm
And
sure.
she was like, "Okay, let's like cut this out." Like, you know. And so I decided that day after 3 days of not smoking, I was like, "I'm already 3 days in, let's do this." And I never was a smoker again after that. I got so sick of my own shit that I finally just quit. And so, that's the thing about a breakthrough is that like you have to be so tired of getting the same results and you have to be so sick and tired of your own crap. And when the pain gets bad enough or the discomfort gets bad enough, you have a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Okay. There's
Yeah.
nothing anyone can tell you to make you quit anything. There's nothing that anyone can do. You have to get there on your own terms. And you know what?
Yeah.
You might not get there for another 10 years or 5 years or 20 years or 30, but you know what? All that matters is that you got there eventually.
Yeah, and there can be these, I used to say I'm a really bad quitter and I'm a really slow learner.
Yeah.
And both of those are fine. It took me a couple attempts with smoking and the drinking too, because there was this thing that I was holding on to, this sense of normalcy, which I hate that word normal now, but it was this idea that it was so accepted socially to drink that
Ugh, yeah, unfortunately.
I just, I felt really awkward for a long time, and it was really, really, really awkward. But I had been a year without drinking, and because I was living in an ashram in India, so that helped. And
No
then
doubt.
I remember talking to, I was preparing to come home for Christmas for a visit to Canada from India. And I remember talking to one of the directors at the ashram, and very sort of spiritually minded guy. And I said, I'm really worried about going home and being around this. And he said, do you think you'll be tempted? And I said, no, because I actually have no desire to do that anymore. And he said, well, what's the problem? And I said, I'm worried what other people are going to think.
Mm.
And
Oh,
he said, but why don't you just be you and do you? Like, there's so many other things that, that you have to offer the world. And he's like, why would you, pretend to be this other thing that you're not? And if this gives you joy and this lifestyle that you're, he's like, you've been here for 10 months. And I said, yeah, it's pretty. He said, be confident in that. And he said, like, just be you. And he said, other people will know that. He's like, you haven't changed that much. And I said, no, like, I'm still me. I'm just a non-drinking me. And he said, yeah, just see
that's
what happens.
That's beautiful, and I think that that's where people, get hung up is, "Okay, my lifestyle is gonna have to be completely different," and that's where you have to make a change. It's like, "Okay, I'm not gonna be who I was, that means I can't be around the same people that I was, I can't put myself in the same environments that I was," and making that decision really does mean that you are changing your life, but you know what? It's hard and uncomfortable at first, but on the other side of it, you're like, "Huh, that's so weird, that part of me a long time ago that was resisting this change when that change was exactly what I needed and it feels so good now and you couldn't even pay me to go back to that period of
Mm.
time and that type of that lifestyle, right? Or that environment or those people.
And there are some people, like the people that support you are the true
Oh,
kindred spirits. And so there's a lot of people, and we laugh about it now. And for probably two or 3 years, I had friends who had come over. They're like, "Do you want to?" And they're like, I can't believe you don't drink anymore. And I'm still going to ask you every time. And because I was just, the rock star in the
yeah.
group. But
Yeah.
um, but they're not doing it in a sense of like trying to make me feel uncomfortable. It's just that they haven't processed yet, even several years on, that it's not part of my lifestyle. And also because they said I feel rude not offering you. And I said, oh, you can offer me as many times as you want. I'm still going to decline politely.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I think there are certain people that you can maintain those friendships with. And a lot of the times though, it becomes more awkward for other people than it is for you. Once you're confident in yourself and you get through that sort of initial, like, what am I going to do and how am I going to navigate these situations, then it's actually the other people that are more awkward. And it's
Oh yeah.
like, well, no, I'm good, actually. Like, I had a friend when we were allowed to go out dancing. I love dancing. And we were going out and we were just drinking water all night long.
Yeah.
And we would watch people around the bar and being like, oh yeah, that person is about 5 minutes away from home time. And and not to be cruel or anything, but it was just like, we had fun, and we did our own thing. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't need to have that to enjoy ourselves. And so you find ways to adapt your life, and life does not end. And you're still funny and you're still you. Like, I'm still me, I'm just not messy, drunk,
Yeah. It's just
aggressive
life.
cat. I'm,
Yeah.
I'm the good parts of me. I just go to bed a little earlier
That's beautiful. It's like
and
I
don't wake up hungover.
yeah, you've released everything that you're not and you've brought in more of everything that you are and it's like, yeah, well, you know what? I make better decisions for myself on that side. Like I go to bed earlier, I don't wake up hungover, I wake up feeling productive. I didn't destroy my brain cells. I didn't
Mm.
um destroy my self-esteem. I didn't do anything I regretted. I didn't say anything I regretted. I didn't I'm not waking up in the morning feeling all this shame for like shit, what did I say or do last night? And you're so integrated with yourself um that it just feels good and
Yeah.
it's worth it. It's so worth it. um yeah, once you finally stop running and numbing from yourself, it really becomes just a much better life. You start living instead of existing.
Yeah.
I felt like I truly did not live in life and participate with it until I quit. destructing myself with all of these like lower vibrational things like smoking, drinking. Um,
Yeah.
you
Was
know,
it a sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Was it a conscious decision for you? So you asked me, and I'll send
Yeah.
the question back to you. Was it a conscious decision for you? Was it a now's the time, tomorrow's the day? Like, how did that pan out for you? Because it's different for everybody.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kat. Thanks for asking me that. You know, I just like I think for the most part I really just started to become more aware that I was like in a very lower vibrational state, and it seemed like everyone around me every time they were getting drunk, I started kind of noticing that they were like not themselves, like they weren't in there. And I was like, what's taking over them when they're this drunk? Like that person actually wouldn't say or do that when they're sober. And I know that the nature of that person and that their light is in there, but for some reason there's this disconnect happening when they're drinking. It's like some entity takes over them, and I just don't like this person now. And it was just like, something is like not really right. So something started clicking with me there. And then it was like a series of like 5 things I think that happened over like 3 months that I was like, what? So I had a very traumatic experience. Like it was soul shocking to me, I think. And I think it was so traumatic that I was just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like I can't end up in these situations around these people and in these circumstances because it's like destroying me and taking
Mhm.
me down this really dark path that I don't want to be part of. Like, ugh, like I've gone down the darkest of path that I can, and this is my threshold here. I think I reached that threshold where I was like, no, like I was, all of a sudden surrounded by like all these like big time drug dealers and these really dark situations and in these dark circumstances, and it was just like such a lower vibrational experience that I was like, I feel so disturbed. My soul is disturbed. And it's not any judgment on another person. It just means that that's where they are at that time. And do I want to go down that road? I don't. I was like, this is not who you are. Stop it. So,
Yeah.
um, and then another time I was at a party and it was like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And I'm partying and I'm like, holy shit, like usually I get so sleepy like when I drink. And so I was like, man, I'm just like having a great time. This is the best party I've ever been to. It was like so many people. It was like just a great night for everyone. Like there was like hundreds of people there. Everyone was having a great time. It was like right after high school had ended and like my friend's parents, they were out of town and he just had this like super crazy party. And it's super early in the morning and I'm sitting with someone on the couch and I'm like, "Hey, like, shit, what time is it?" And I'm like, "Wow, it's daylight outside." And I was like, "How did I stay awake this late? And how is everyone else awake?" And then I started like looking around at everyone that was still there. Might have been like 20 people left over. And it was like in that moment that I was like looking into their eyes and I was like, "They're not in there." And I was like, "Oh my God, they're so high right now on drugs that like no wonder they're awake and they're just talking fast and they're just like they're just not in there." Like, and I was like, I'm so naive that I just like didn't even know. And I felt like really sad for myself and for those people. And I was like, this is just like really sad. And I was like, I think I
Mhm.
need to go home. And I just like in that moment I called a cab and I went and sat outside away from everyone and I was like, shit. Like it's one thing to be around the drinking and that situation, whatever. It's another thing to be like really immersed in like a drug life with these hard drugs that people are doing. And I was like, this isn't me. It's just not. And again, it's like I literally have no judgment for anyone that's been in that experience or is still in that experience now, you know. We're all in life experiencing these things and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with us or that we're bad or anything. It just means that like is this what you want for your life, you know? And so there was that happened and then I remember I first moved out and I started working in a like bars and restaurants and stuff, and that lifestyle was even weirder because like, okay, maybe I started hanging out with different people that were now in the restaurant industry, and I was starting to make like different friends that I felt like maybe were a little bit healthier, but at the same time, like everyone was living in their parents' basements. Some of them were like 30, and like a lot of them were my age too, but and they had no goals in life, no dreams, no ambitions, no just no direction, and they all started, like, doing hard drugs, and I was like, "Wow," like, there's this threshold that's been reached now where it's gone from, like, drinking to drugs, and now I just seem to keep entering into these situations with people, and I really don't think I want to be part of this experience. And in the restaurant industry, in the bar industry, you're drinking 7 days a week. Like
Mm.
the restaurant closes at midnight, everyone's going to this guy's house, and your night is just beginning. And then you go home at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. You've lost your whole day. And then you wake up and you're half dead, and you're like, oh my God, I'm never drinking again. And then 8 hours later, your friends call you up, hey, coming to this party, coming to drink. Yeah, all right, I'll be there. And you just do it all over again. And I was waitressing this one night, and this guy, this was a terrible experience, but again, so necessary. This guy was sitting at a booth with his brother and his son, and this guy was the biggest jerk of any person I've ever met in my life. It was like disturbing how rude he was treating his brother and his son, like this poor little child. I'm watching the way he's interacting with this child, and I'm like, this man shouldn't have been allowed to have children. Like, this is breaking my heart how he was talking to him. And I'm like, well, whatever. I got to get through this. Like, this is my job. I got to make some money, whatever. So I'm sitting talking, and this guy, he keeps asking me all these questions that are making me feel like kind of like uncomfortable, but whatever. I'm still going along with it, just trying to get through it, really. Then he asks me this one question. He says, so what do you do for fun? And I was like, well, like nothing really. I don't know, whatever. And then he goes, so like what are you doing here? Like waitressing? Like what's your plans? Like are you here to be doing waitressing in order to do something? I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you must not just be a waitress. Like you must be in college or doing something, like whatever, like frowning on me that I'm a waitress and that I should be someone else or at least be achieving it. And then he was just like disgusted with me that I had no plans, and that I was just this waitress going nowhere in life. And I was like, you know what? I knew in that moment it was actually not so much about him, but about me. And I was like, you know what? He can think whatever he wants about me. But for a moment there, I actually was like, you know what, Melanie? You're meant for so much more. You don't know what it is, but you got to just start. You got to start
Mm.
searching. And it might take you forever, but just start somewhere. So I actually went home that night, and I was like really, really sad and really like kind of disoriented from what had just happened. And it was just like that painful moment. He was my greatest teacher. He was such a jerk, but it changed the course of my life forever, because I just knew that things couldn't stay the same. I was like stuck in this time loop. It felt like it was like I was going in a circle, going in a circle. I wasn't growing, I wasn't changing, I wasn't happy. And
Mm.
like I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing in life? And I started realizing that week, like I was drinking so much I started shaking. And I was like, I don't think this is normal. Like when I'm, you know, coming off of my drinking, I've got the shakes,
Yeah.
and I'm feeling actually very depressed. Alcohol is a depressant. And yeah, and then another thing that just kind of happened was, with all of those things put together, I felt like I kind of was able to look at myself from a higher perspective, like look at my life as a whole and be like, this is a train wreck. Like, is this really like what I want? And am I going to get where I'm trying to go by like staying around in these situations with these people, um, with this way of being and this way of thinking? And if I don't like step in and like have the balls to change this, then where am I going to get to next? Like,
Mm.
it's going to keep getting worse. I just knew. So actually, my friend, that's where I moved to Red Deer, is she was like, Mel, I've asked you for months to move here with me. And I was like, oh, from my dead body, like I'm partying, leave me alone. And, and I realized that like if I didn't leave the guy that I was dating, and he was my best friend since I was like a kid. So it felt very hard to get away from him as much as I knew it was time, and we really allowed our relation to expire way past the expiry date, like years after. There was something about us that we just like couldn't get away from each other. And I was like, you know what? I know that by moving to Red Deer, I can A, go to college, B, get away from my boyfriend, C, get away from my friends, D, stop making all these bad decisions for myself. Like, I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I have no money, none, and I'm scared. And whatever, the list goes on and on and on, but I have to do it. So I
Yeah.
called my friend. I was like, "Listen, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm thinking. Please help me." And she's like, "Yeah, Kate." So she like went on the internet. She's like, "Okay, these are the things that you can take with the grades that you have," which were shitty, by the way, because I was too busy with my fake ID in grade 12 going to drink beer and eat wings during the day instead of going to class. But anyway, um and she like helped me sign up for school, and I was so overwhelmed by the task. It seemed like a mountain. I was like, oh, it's like this mountain. I can't, how am I going to get the money, how am I going to do this and apply, and she's like, just calm yourself down, I'll help you. So it was just like her support, her being there for me. And within a week I had gotten approved for a loan. I got approved for school, and I moved in, and we moved in together, and my life literally changed forever
Mm.
since then. But this would
Was
happen. Mhm.
was that the first time you sort of followed an intuitive sign?
It was the first time that I, like, followed it and stuck with it. I was like, "No,
Yeah.
you are sticking here. You know that
Yeah.
this is wrong. You always go against your intuition. You always choose the wrong thing at the expense of yourself and worrying about what other people will think, or just continue self-abandoning, and because that's just what you do."
Mm.
And so I got there, like I said, I quit smoking, I quit drinking, and she didn't drink either, so it was, like, easy. And, you know, what came after that was actually probably harder, because for the first time in my life, I was alone away from my friends, my family, everything I had ever known, and it was good. It felt good, but it felt really bad. And it felt really difficult to be with myself because I'm not drinking anymore, I'm not smoking, I'm not numbing myself out or hiding from myself or running from myself. Everything just got so still and so quiet, and it got like really depressing, really fast, really dark. And I like it was like my spiritual awakening was happening. I entered into the dark night of the soul, and I started to question why I did the things I did, why I thought the thoughts I did. I started to have flashbacks of like things that happened to me in my life. I started to feel this like deep, deep grief that I had never felt before, and I knew that I was feeling everything I have never felt my entire life because I was sober. And so I wasn't suppressing anything anymore. It was all coming to the surface, and I had to deal with it. And it was so horrible that I felt like I was dying. I just wanted the pain to go away. I wanted to die. I didn't want to be alive, but I knew I had to just get through it. And I knew it was just an experience I was having. Um, but it indeed felt like I was dying. And it's because I was.
Did you have any coping mechanisms at that time that you were using?
Yeah, I chewed a lot of
What were you doing?
dill pickle spits, and I was so dehydrated, it was
Yeah.
crazy.
So
And
you weren't into yoga yet at that time.
yeah, so I started with the spits, and then uh
Then you graduated to yoga.
yeah, then I started doing all these diets, because then I started gaining so much weight because I wasn't smoking or drinking anymore. Because I never cared about food before. I was freaking drunk. Just leave me alone. I'm having a great old
Yeah.
time. I don't even think about food. And the smoking increases your metabolism and your heart rate, right? So all of a sudden I started just like ballooning up, and then I was feeling super self-conscious, and I always felt self-conscious my whole life. And now all of a sudden I'm not numb, and I can actually feel that and be aware of it. And it was just like I hated myself. And
Mm.
I started doing like all these diets, and they would work, but then I would like stop them and I gain all the weight back, and then I feel even shittier about myself. And then I started taking up yoga, and I actually hated yoga to begin with, to be honest. And I didn't like it, and it's because it was like forcing me to sit still. I never sat still before because I was constantly living in survival mode. I was always running away from myself. I was always keeping myself busy. I never sat still long enough. I never sat with myself. I never took the time to know myself. I never took the time to be quiet. It was like I always had to achieve, do, or be, or blah, 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 blah. And so it was crazy. Yoga made me very uncomfortable, and I started to like, by not being able to run away and being stuck in a room for an hour, I started to become very aware of like that I have these emotions inside in this dialogue, and that I started to create a relationship with them, and I started to create a relationship with my body. So now all of a sudden I'm really aware of like the pains and the aches in my body, and aware of like I'm becoming grounded in my experience, where it's like, huh, I think there was like this disconnect before, that I had a brain, a body, emotions, and all these things. And so my friend, we would go all the time, and I first started off in yoga, like talking to her in the room, and she'd be like, "No, shut up, like you can't talk in yoga." And then people would like be like, "Shh," and I was like, "What are all these serious people like so grumpy about me talking?" And then as I got into yoga, I was like, "Ooh, I can't believe I was that person that would like go into the room and like talk and stuff. It's so disruptive." But it's just like so funny to watch how the journey changes. And yeah, I think yoga was like the beginning of something really big for me, and it was in that moment actually where I was like, remember there's this girl teaching yoga class. She was my favorite teacher in Red Deer, and she would always just say these like very deep things, and I was like, I want to be friends with people like that. Like that's who I am. Like why like there's people out there like that. So like this must be the path I need to follow. And I remember a lady got really mad. She's like, I don't know who the heck this girl is. She's only got to be like 21, trying to give us all this wisdom in this yoga class and whatever. And I was like, uh, just so you know, I was like, your response makes me like feel really sad because you're totally like disregarding her. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I might be like, I'm the same age. I was like, I'm 19, but I have been through more in 19 years of life experience and pain. And I have such a big understanding of the world and the way things work, and so much experience that for you to sit here and say just because someone's 19 that they shouldn't be able to talk about things like that is just like really insulting. Like
I
some
hope
people,
the yoga helped her
yeah, it's like some
be
people
more accepting.
some people go through stuff earlier in their life, whereas like, yeah, you can accumulate that much knowledge in 80 years, but personally for me, like I acquired more knowledge in 31 years than most people would by 80, because and it's just what I signed up for on this earth. And it's part of like I needed to go through that in order to get where I need to be to help other people. And I was just like, huh, you know what? Yeah, and then I moved back to Edmonton a couple years later, and I kept going to yoga studios, and I just felt like really out of place, and I just felt like I was really longing for this community and longing for spirituality. And I was like, "Okay, I'm not finding what I'm looking for anymore. It's gone, and I need to do it myself." Because there's a million other people out there who are obviously sitting at home going, "Oh my God, where are the people who are like kind and loving and want to have these really deep conversations and want to like heal themselves and grow and like talk about things that have happened to them in life, and like people that I can trust and are into like I don't want to go bowling, I don't want to go to the movies, I don't want to drink, I don't want to go to the bar. Like, okay, where's the people who like want to go sit under a tree with me and want to like read books and want to just have a conversation and who want to like whatever, you know what I mean? It's like go sit by the water with me, like. And so I was like, I'm gonna find that community and I'm gonna bring all those people together. And you know what? Sitting here
You
today,
did.
I freaking did. And I'm like, oh, how did I do that? I honestly don't know how I did it. So you know what? You guys, one step at a time, just make a decision, start to follow it. You're gonna have no idea what you're doing. I still don't know what I'm doing. And things just unfold. Your path just starts to show you the way and starts to bring you towards where you're going truly.
Yeah. Maybe that's a good point for us to sort of wrap it up a little bit and give people a little, you and I had talked about giving a homework assignment because we both know the value of
Yes.
integration, right? It's one thing to talk about stuff, but it's another thing to put things in action. Um, and I think you were just saying the last thing you said was like one step. If there's one thing that you can choose this week, one action step, what would that be? It doesn't have to be something massive. In fact, I think the more tangible and accessible things are, and we talked about this at the beginning of our
Yeah.
conversation, the easier and more bite-sized it is, the less likely we are to one, do it, and two, succeed at it. And
Yeah.
then in that success, it gives us the confidence and um, the practice to keep moving forward.
Yes. And so that's perfect. And I think, just think about one thing you can do this week to like get where you want to go in life. And if you don't know where you want to go, how do you want to feel? So if you want to feel less like hungover, you know, then maybe just, think about something like, well, I'm not going to drink on the weekdays. Like you don't have to quit overnight. It's actually very hard to do it that way. it actually took me several like months to stop drinking, and then I still drank here and there, but it's just not part of my lifestyle anymore. There's no room for it. Um, so just you know, thinking of what's that one thing I can do that's going to help me get to where I'm going to want to go or where I want to feel. And like you said, make it achievable. Don't put this big thing on yourself that's going to make you feel like you set yourself up for failure. And then the other thing is like as you're doing those things and you're changing, it's going to bring up a lot of inner resistance for you. So know that and be okay with it and just work through it. And um just know that if people are coming to you like they did to me and they were like, "Oh, you're no fun anymore. You're such a bitch. Like you think you're better than everyone now that you're not drinking and all these things and you're no fun anymore." And I was like, I had to get to a point eventually where I was like, I feel really sad that these are supposed to be my friends or my family, and they're saying these things to me, and they're trying to encourage me actually to smoke cigarettes and drink again when I've quit. So I had to be like, no, I have to get away from these people. And so unfortunately, sometimes it requires cutting out environments or people. And it's not out that you don't love them. It's just that you love yourself more and you love yourself enough to do what's best for you.
Yeah, and I think too to be really clear, it's not that you and I are sitting here saying everybody needs to quit drinking. This
No,
is our
not at
journey,
all.
and that's what ultimately had to happen for us because we had this innate knowing inside that it was blocking us from so many things and held us back from so many things. So that's I think the message is not to eliminate it, but if you're having that calling or that intuitive sense of like something's got to change, like you said, Mel, start with one switch, make it really really easy. Okay, if it's 5 days a week now, pull back to 3 days a week or whatever, that doable switch, and then notice how you feel. But
Yeah,
also agree with you, expect a little bit of resistance, not just from your own mind and body, but maybe from other people. And then journal maybe about it. Journaling is a great way, or talk to somebody about it, a great way to sort of piece through what comes up and how you're feeling and where that resistance is, and just sort of oversee it either on paper or in a conversation.
absolutely. And thank you so much, Kat, for actually clarifying that because again, yeah, there's absolutely no judgment here on anyone.
Yeah.
It's a matter of we're here to talk about our experience. For those who feel that they're ready to quit and they want to, not because we're saying that you should. We're all in our own experiences for what we need to experience and there's not one way of being or the other. It's just, this is our path. And if someone feels called to this path and feels that it resonates with them, and, we've been able to share something today that helped you, like, please like this and please comment on it if it resonates with you because it really helps us to know, like, what more we need to start talking about and how it is reaching people. And, it might actually make you feel heard and seen by other people that can have a conversation with you. So, um, there's gonna be lots more of these from me and Kat, and, in the meantime, like, if you wanna find us or follow us, if you resonate with Kat, Kat, where can everyone find you?
The best way is probably on social, and my handle is Nourish to Glow with Cat, either Instagram or Facebook, or you can check out my website, which is catmclean.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And if you're kinda watching this on Kat's end and you don't already follow me, where can you find me? Melanie Danielle Wellness, on Instagram or Facebook, and also, um Buddha Belly Yoga and Wellness on Facebook or Instagram. And I do have a website. It's melaniecousins.com, but I really need to change it because that's not my last name anymore. So that'll be
Under construction.
under construction. So um, anyway, yeah, we'd love to hear from you if this resonates. And good luck. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thanks so
Mel.
much. Thanks so much, Kat. I truly appreciate
Thank you.
time and offering your wisdom and your experiences and sharing so much of yourself. It is a vulnerable thing to do and it does take courage and willingness to share your story. So thank you.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Glad we did it. Can't
Anytime.
wait to the next one.
Me too. Okay, bye, Kat.
Bye.